Good afternoon, everyone. Rachel, Elizabeth, am I loud and clear? Rachel, can you hear me? Elizabeth, are you able to hear me?
I can hear you, Franklin.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. We are supposed to start at midday. I'm just giving people around 5 minutes for them to log on to this call. So I expect us to start at exactly 12:40. So kindly be patient as we just give a few minutes for the rest of the teams to join, those that are having issues, and then we should be able to start. I also want to inform the team that already our trainer is on this call. So please text your people. Let's all be here for this training on time. At exactly 40 past, we should be able to start. I should be able to take this opportunity to welcome the members on this call, the guests that we have, those that have managed to already log in. We are already around 33 people. Andrew, you're welcome. Atiak Charles, you're welcome. Wambare, you're welcome. Aromba, you're welcome. Doreen, as Vice Chairperson, you're welcome. Eddie, and our President is already on call. Edgar, you're welcome. Elisa, George, Henry, you're all welcome to this training. Today we have one question that we need to be answered. If you have any queries, any questions, any expectations, kindly don't hesitate to type in the chat. You'll keep your expectations coming, keep your questions coming. Of course, the admin team should be able to respond quickly. I already said that we should be able to start at exactly 40 past. So let's have every member on this call. Someone says they cannot hear what I'm saying. Can someone confirm if you're able to hear me?
I'm able to hear you. Thank you.
Okay. So please, if you're not able to hear me, I think that's Mercy. Mercy, kindly maybe look for another option because the other people are texting, they're able to hear me. So most probably it is your network. Okay. So I'm still welcoming everyone to this training. ESGs are usually not something that people are familiar with, but today we are privileged to have an expert in our midst to kind of break through whatever we're going to answer all our questions, but also to be able to explain to us what we should be expecting. So consensus, we only have 1 minute to start. I will request the team to get ready. Let's get our earphones. Let's be able to listen. And like I've said, let's put all our expectations, our questions, or queries in the chat. Someone should be able to review those and you'll be able to get feedback by the end of this training. Let's just be ready to learn. So like I said, at 40 past, we should be starting. Okay, and I'll be moderating this session. Okay. So I said that we are privileged to have in our midst. I'm not sure if you're seeing me or if you're able to see me. So let's be able to start. I said in our midst, we have a key personnel, an expert in ESGs. And I want to take this opportunity to welcome you, Alex Kakuku, our senior to this training and our moderator for today. I'll just give a brief, but I'm sure that Alex can give more briefs about himself. I'll just give a detail. I'll just give a topping on the ice, just to be able to, for us to understand who we're speaking to or who is speaking to us. So Alex, you're most welcome. I love the fact that you're a very good timekeeper. I'm sure that most people found you on this call, and it is a privilege and an honor to have you as our moderator for today and our trainer for today. So I'm called Franklin Mwesije, the Vice President, Safety and Health Association Uganda, and I'll be moderating this session. Just a few rules. Let's kindly type all our questions, our expectations in the chat. And I'm sure that the team, the admin team, should be able to give us a feedback form at the end of this training. The feedback form is to enable us to perform better and to serve you better. So today in our midst, we have Alex Kakuku, who is a co-founder and technical director at Geotropic Consults. He's an environmental and social safeguards practitioner in Uganda. He is also a NEMA certified environmental practitioner. He is a team leader and a member of Mines and Petroleum. We are going to speak to an environmental expert today, I can assure you. He's also a member of the Safety and Health Association Uganda. He has over 15 years experience in health and safety. That is in the manufacturing, in the telecom, and most recently in the oil and gas sector. Alex's achievements, and one of them, he notably led Earton Towers to their triple ISO certification. For those of you who know what we call an integrated management system, you know what it means, especially if it is your first time certification. You know what kind of commitment, what kind of effort that you put in. And he led their certification, that was in 2017, and maintained it until its acquisition by the American Tower. He holds a bachelor's degree in environmental science and a Bosch IGC and a master's degree in environment, health, and safety management. He has also, above the master's, he has also done trainings in very, very many crucial key courses, and that includes IMS, internal auditing, lead QMS, lead auditor, and EMS, internal auditing still. Alex is an alumnus of the Institute of the National Transformation in Uganda, having completed the OXID Executive Leadership course. So briefly, that is what we have, and those are the few details that I can give. But at this opportunity, at this time, let me invite Alex to kindly give us a brief about himself and also be able to take us through this training. Thank you very much. And Alex, you're most welcome today. Please kindly give us a brief and then we can start the training. Thank you very much. Alex, please unmute and meet the team.
A warm afternoon to you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, Madam Vice President Franklin Mwesije, for this introduction, and to the entire Shao leadership for inviting me to share on a subject that I'm so passionate about. I don't want to present myself as an expert, but rather an enthusiast. The ESG space is quite broad and interesting, and there's always a lot to learn every other day. So as I'll be delving into the discourse this afternoon, we shall certainly have to learn from each other at a later time, especially when we will have an opportunity to interact through the questions and answer session. I think the Vice President has already done justice to that humble introduction and profile of who I am. And in the interest of time, I will not add more onto what has already been said about my profile. And I will, if you may allow, just proceed into this discussion. I know it's a Friday afternoon and it's being time taken off from your lunch break. So I want us to finish on time. So for those of us who have official engagements beyond 2, so we can revert. Thank you so much, and I will proceed to share my slides. Kindly let me know if you're able to see my slides so that we can proceed.
Yes, Alex, we are able to see your screen. You can proceed.
Great, thank you so much. Unfortunately, I'm not able to see it on my end besides my video, and I want to be in control of these slides as they are moving.
Maybe you can stop sharing and reshare again and see if you're able to access them then.
Okay, let me just do that.
And of course, as Alex is resharing the screen, I already said that we have a few rules. Let's kindly text or type whatever questions we have in the chat. Okay. And then, of course, we shall have a Q&A session where you'll be allowed to unmute and ask your question. Alex, we can see your screen. I'm not sure if you're able to control it now.
Okay. Is everything fine now?
Yes, I can see your screen, ESG.
All right. Apologies for that glitch. We can now proceed. Today's subject is on an area called ESG. And I want to bring out a few issues, and that's why I chose the title ESG, What You Need to Know. And I thought I should begin today's presentation with a history. ESG, or sustainability, is a buzzword that is being talked about in corridors of corporate organizations, international NGOs, government offices, but not much may actually be known about it. And yet, if we try to interrogate the history, the principle of the ESG has actually been with us for quite some time. But I want to give a context aligned to only the last 50 years. In 1987, there was a commission that was launched by the UN, chaired by a gentleman called Brundtland. And that commission came up with a report which was entitled Our Common Future. And in that report, the issue of sustainable development came out very strongly. In that report, Brundtland and his members on the commission stated that development should be sustainable and it should meet the needs of the poor and not add to the world's environmental problem. And they went ahead to coin the word sustainable development, which they described as the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. In 1992, there was a very important conference that happened. It was the UN Conference on Environment and Development. It's referred to as the Earth Summit. It held in Brazil on the 20th anniversary of the first Earth Summit that had happened in Stockholm in 1972. And what came out during the Earth Summit, the world leaders who convened for the UN General Assembly focused on the impact of human socio-economic activities on the environment. And the major outcome from that summit was a charter which is referred to as Agenda 21. And Agenda 21 was a daring call to action program, a commitment from the world leaders where they believed that action had to be taken at all levels, focusing right from the local level, the national level, the regional, and the international level. This was followed in 2015, where we had the Paris Climate Agreement. And at that agreement, the leaders who convened agreed that there was need to take climate action in light of issues that had to do with carbon and greenhouse gas emissions that were increasingly high in the atmosphere, and there was concern that the global temperatures that were rising at an astronomical level had to be curbed. So the Paris Agreement had an overarching goal of ensuring that the world takes action to limit the temperatures from increasing to 1.5 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial levels. This was followed in 2016 with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Development Goals reiterated the need for an urgent call to action by all countries, be it the developed or from the underdeveloped world. And it called for commitment and focus, and it came up with actually 17 goals that speak to the planet and people. What came out very strongly at that meeting where the UN Sustainable Development Goals were agreed upon by the world leaders was that these goals were a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet. And that was now, which was then in 2016, and the future. The goals have a 15-year period, which runs out in 2030, from 2016, when countries assented to them. That has been more on the environment side or the environment pillar. But to address issues of the social pillar in the ESG, multinational enterprises developed a global instrument to guide ethical behavior of multinationals in 1976. And that particular framework was referred to as the social contract. More recently, in 1998, the International Labour Organization also came up with the declarations on fundamental principles and rights at work. And in that declaration, the ILO put together issues of freedom of association, elimination of forced labor, child labor abolition, and elimination of discrimination. Clearly, you see that all these fit into the social pillar in the ESG. With that history, I would like now to delve into what ESG really is. And as you can see in that slide over there, it's an acronym which stands for environmental, social, and governance. These three pillars implemented together, they help to drive the sustainability agenda. And the major focus with ESG is really on people and the planet. One other thing, we need to know that to have proper implementation of an ESG strategy, it needs to be aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And as mentioned earlier, these goals are a universal call to action to end poverty, to protect the planet, and ensure that all people enjoy peace and prosperity by that date of 2030, which was agreed to by the world leaders during their 2016 General Assembly. I want to introduce the component of corporate ESG. When you talk about ESG, it can take two forms. And one of the forms is corporate ESG. The second formal approach is what we refer to as ESG investment. But for the purposes of today's webinar, we'll corporate ESG. And what is it? Corporate ESG is about operating the business in a balanced way that enables a company to endure through the creation of value for all its stakeholders in the long term. What you're seeing over there are 3 pillars: people, planet, profit. And at the center of those is sustainability. Those 3 constructs lead us to what we call the triple bottom line. Previously, organizations or companies were focusing on as long as an organization was able to post healthy profits to its shareholders, it was found to be performing. But most recently, organizations are getting to understand that posting healthy profits is not the only thing, and they have adopted the ESG strategy, which talks or explains what we now call the triple bottom line. The triple bottom line model ensures that you don't only push for economic success at the expense of the society and the environment, but even as organizations are pushing for healthy profits, they have to be mindful of the environmental sustainability and the people. I want to talk about each of these 3 pillars a bit more in detail. Environmental sustainability. This pillar here focuses on examining how a business performs as a steward of our natural environment. And it focuses on aspects like waste and pollution, resource depletion, greenhouse gas emissions, deforestation, and biodiversity. So as a business is operating, it's important for them to keep a keen eye on each of these areas. How do they go about issues of waste and pollution? How do they address concerns to do with resource depletion in light of the Sustainable Development definition that the Brundtland Commission talked about? Earlier on, we said that sustainable development is the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Issues of deforestation, where we're having people indiscriminately felling trees and grappling with the rate of replenishment. Concerns with biodiversity at the different levels, be it at the population level, at the species level, or even entire ecosystems that are being affected. Climate change. We'll talk about this in detail as I proceed with my presentation. Now, on the environment pillar, one of the biggest challenges that the world is grappling with is the issue of emissions. And these are primarily driven by human-induced activities. Activities related with industrialization, where we need to power our industries. The source of energy that we are using, our industries. The source of energy that we are using in our supply chains to move our vehicles, to fly our planes around the world, to move these vessels across the oceans and the other water bodies. Most of this energy source is primarily from fossil fuels. How are we handling the issue of emissions, both from carbon dioxide and the other greenhouse gases? Emissions can be split, or they are actually split into three scopes, where we have emissions that are from source, being categorized as the direct emissions, or the scope ones. At your source of your facility, your warehouse, or your manufacturing plant. We have the scope 2 emissions that are associated with utilities. In Uganda here, we have we also have indirect emissions under the scope 3, which primarily related to the supply chains. How are organizations positioning themselves to manage these emissions into the environment? To answer that question, one of the strategies that organizations are taking or can take is to adopt the concept of circular economy. And with the circular economy, you aim to reduce the amount of waste that is sent into the environment by ensuring that the products that are produced are durable, first of all, such that you do not have to keep manufacturing new products. But beyond ensuring that you're manufacturing durable products, they adopt the 3 R's, where there is reusing products, coming up with a framework of remanufacturing and recycling. Once these approaches are done, the focus is clearly to reduce on your carbon emissions footprint. Everything you do as an entity, as an organization, you need to be cognizant of the amount of carbon and other greenhouse gases that your operations are churning into the environment, and you come up with strategies, plans, initiatives to reduce the carbon emissions footprint. And the overall goal is what the countries agreed to in 2016 when they signed the Paris Agreement. Net zero. And you can see that it's net zero at 2050. There is a call, a global call to action to ensure that by 2050, the amount of carbon, GHG, that is released into the environment is netted off. It's either zero or in negatives. Moving on to the social pillar under the ESG. This pillar really revolves around how organizations relate with people. And these people could be their employees, they could be their customers, or the community within which these organizations operate. How does a company's business relationship focus on people? What are your employee relationships like as an organization? What plans for health and safety do you have? First of all, for your employees, and community health and safety, where you have initiatives that they ensure that as an organization is going about its business, the people in the community are not exposed to health and safety related hazards. We have issues to do with equity, diversity, and gender covered under the social pillar in sustainability. The working conditions, aspects to do with forced labor, child labor, customer protection. All these are concerns that are explicitly covered under the social pillar in the ESG framework. Governance is the third pillar under the ESG framework. And what governance really addresses is how an organization polices itself with issues to do with compliance. And it focuses on aspects related to taxation. What's the organization's tax strategy like? It addresses issues of executive remuneration, the top executives, how are they remunerated in comparison to the rest of the workforce. There are concerns to do with donations and political lobbying. This also addresses aspects of corruption and anti-bribery in the governance pillar. We have anti-corruption laws in Uganda, and for some companies, especially those that originate from the UK, sign up to what we call the Anti-Bribery and Corruption Act in the UK, but it is able to be spread to companies, subsidiaries that operate outside the UK, but are affiliated to current companies from the United Kingdom. In the US, they have the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which also speaks against corruption, especially to public officials for all companies that are originated or associated with parent companies in the US. Issues of IT security and cybersecurity are also covered under the governance pillar of the ESG. Having explained what ESG really is and it stands for, we need to examine how an organization can develop an ESG framework. And I've been able to raise 6 steps here in that order. And the first one is an organization needs to assess its current practices and their impact on the people, the planet, and the profit. What we earlier referred to as the triple bottom line. The second thing that has to be done in developing an ESG framework is to set specific goals. And these goals should be seen to align with the people, planet, and profit, and the organization's overall business strategy. The organization now needs to take action and implement a plan to achieve its goal. That is where the real work is, taking action. It's not good enough to have goals, but as long as you're not taking action, an ESG framework cannot be implemented. When you refer to the SDGs, they are actually built around taking urgent action. So bringing it down to every organization at its level, it's important to ensure that action is implemented. A plan to achieve goals has to be put in place. And once this plan is in place and is being rolled out, it needs to be followed up with periodic monitoring on reducing your carbon emissions footprint. That target would be measured against a baseline which an organization would have set. You must have a baseline here. You must know what amount of carbon emissions, for example, are being emitted from your operations. Once that is known, you set a target. And once you set that target, monitoring and measurement has to be done to evaluate whether you're taking steps in the right direction to meet your target or you're still way off your targets. And once that is done, it is very important to communicate your progress with stakeholders. And these stakeholders can be your customers, it could be your employees, investors, very critical category of stakeholders, and the community. And this is where this sustainability or ESG reporting comes in. You're seeing organizations, corporate organizations coming up with reporting on their ESG strategies through their ESG reports, because it's incumbent of them to ensure that every step they are taking, they notify the stakeholders. Some of them are being driven by regulatory requirements. Some of them, it's because it is a requirement for every company that is listed, the publicly listed companies. They are required to report on their ESG performance. So once you have a plan and you're monitoring its implementation, it's very important for you to communicate your progress with the respective stakeholders. And finally, continual improvement is also a critical requirement in ESG frameworks implementation. If you are not meeting your targets as planned, you have to get down to the drawing board, think of new strategies, you think of new ways to ensure that you keep on track or you improve such that the targets that you have set out in as far as your ESG framework is concerned can be met. Excuse me. So as you're developing an ESG framework, you need to ask yourself some critical questions. The question-driven approach helps organizations to identify key areas where positive impact can be made. By brainstorming amongst your teams in an organization, you ask the right questions, covering each of the three pillars: the people, the planet, the profit. And once you ask the right questions and you get the relevant answers, you will be able to come up with a proper ESG framework for your business. Some of the questions, for example, on the the people pillar or the social pillar is, you could pose questions like, does your business serve society or humanity? Are there people who would genuinely benefit from your products or services, but they cannot afford? Or what specific initiatives are you committed to that serve your employees, suppliers, neighbors, or communities? When you find answers to such questions, it will help you as an organization to come up with a proper ESG framework. On the environment pillar, which I'm referring to here as preserving the planet. You could come up with questions such as determining whether your business helps preserve natural resources. Do you have a robust plan in place to reduce your environmental footprint? Where do you currently demonstrate product recycling? This talks to the circular economy that I earlier mentioned on. And how do you encourage responsible consumption? You realize that all these are featured under the Sustainable Development Goals, which I will present a slide about in detail. So what specific initiatives are you committed to that help preserve the planet? And as you respond to these questions, you are actually narrowing down to coming up with a proper ESG framework for your organization. The Sustainable Development Goals. These are a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for the people and planet. And these came into force in 2016. There are 17 goals that must be pursued interrelatedly. The world leaders are focusing on ensuring that these goals are met by 2030. Although there are challenges, not all of them are on the same pace. Some of them, action has been taken and they are posting better results, while others are still lagging. So what is important is to appreciate and understand these sustainable development goals at a global level, and organizations should be able to align these sustainable development goals to the business strategy in the organization. You can see that each of these three pillars, environmental, social, and governance, have specific SDGs that speak to each of those pillars. For example, goal number 6, which talks about clean water, would be covered under the environment pillar. Goal number 13, which is climate action. So once we understand this sustainable, against the specific pillars in relationship to the kind of business that our organizations undertake. So in this slide, I want to show us an alignment of how ESG can be aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. And I was able to pick an extract from the National Social Security Fund ESG report, which was released a few weeks ago. And you can see that the NSSF identified out of the 17 SDGs, they identified 11 SDGs that they believe are aligned with the nature of their business. You can see that under the environment pillar, they captured issues to do with climate action, clean water and sanitation, sustainable cities and communities. If you look at the social pillar, they picked up about 7 of the 17 sustainable development goals that speaks into their social pillar. And goal number 16, under governance. What is key for us to appreciate is that increasingly, these sustainable development goals are becoming the major framework for implementing ESG frameworks. That is why I thought I should introduce these SDGs to us here today. There are very many frameworks prior to this, but because the SDGs are implemented right from the global level and they keep cascading to the regional and the national level, most corporations are finding it relevant to develop their ESG frameworks by aligning them to the Sustainable Development Goals. I want to take some time now to share some corporate initiatives that organizations, especially here in Uganda, have taken to align with ESG or sustainability. And one of them is the Tasa Obutonde campaign, which I'm sure all of you are aware of. Tasa Obutonde, for those who may not be from Uganda, is literally a translation for saving the environment or saving the planet. And this is an initiative where some corporate organizations, including Vivo Energy, Uganda Breweries, Stanbic Bank, and NBS, have taken up to address issues of responsible plastic use. They have yielded to this call to action by ensuring that they publicize information about responsible use of plastics, encouraging people to ensure that they reduce, reuse, and recycle plastics. The NSSF have come up with a very similar project under their High Innovator program, where they recycle plastics and glasses into high quality blocks that have been used for tiling. And I found a very startling statistic, which shows that in Uganda, we have an annual waste generation, which is in excess of 3 million tons of plastic. And of that, it's only 8% that is being recycled. You can imagine the problem of plastics that we are still grappling with as a country. And that only calls for action, initiatives of how best we can ensure that circular economies are actually at play. What initiatives can we put in place to ensure that recycling, reuse, and reduction of plastics is encouraged, such that we have a net reduction of the plastics that are produced and churned into the environment. Another initiative that corporate bodies have taken up is the campaign that is called the Roots Campaign. The Roots Campaign is a 5-year project which stands for running out of trees. And this is a campaign that corporate organizations still have come together alongside the Ministry of Water and Environment and an NGO called Tree Adoption Uganda. They have ensured that trees are planted. They are looking out for areas that have been degraded and they are replanting trees. In this particular article, last year in 2022, they made a commitment, 5 corporate organizations, including Total Energies, American Towers, UBL, they came up with an initiative of ensuring that they were able to plant 1 million trees in one day. And this initiative still goes on for the next 5 years since 2022. These corporate organizations have committed to ensure that more and more trees are planted in Uganda under the Roots project. More corporate initiatives have been taken up by organizations. In 2021, American Towers, for example, chose to align their sustainability strategy to focus on the 3 pillars of environment, social, and governance, the ESG. And while they did that, they were still maintaining focus on their vision of ensuring that wireless communication is possible everywhere in all the markets in which they operate. And they went ahead to align their strategy with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. As I mentioned to you earlier on, that organizations are increasingly choosing to align their ESG with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. If you look at goal number 17 of the Sustainable Development Goals, it talks about partnerships. And one of the ways that some corporate entities have decided to is to go through partnerships, with the most notable organization being the UN Global Compact. Now, the UN Global Compact has 10 principles and 4 pillars. And these 4 pillars speak to human rights, labor, and you can see that those 2 are really resonating with the social pillar in the ESG. The other pillar is the environment, which is an ESG pillar in its own right. And then anti-corruption comfortably sits under the governance pillar in the implementation of ESG frameworks. Reporting is another important tool. We talked about organizations being able to report on their ESG frameworks through their sustainability reporting. But there are quite a number of tools that can be used. Before we evaluate those, what is ESG reporting? I explained it here as a process of publicly disclosing an organization's progress towards meeting its goals and commitments on environmental sustainability, social issues, and corporate governance. You can see that it's about public disclosure. And what we are disclosing is really commitments on environmental sustainability. Issues to do with emissions. If you have set targets to reduce on your GHG emissions, how are you meeting your targets? Organizations are coming out to report on this. If you have a target of reducing on the amount of waste or pollution that your operations are churning into the environment, how are you reporting on that against your baseline? Social issues. How organizations are relating with their employees, with their customers, with the regulators. And under corporate governance, this one mainly speaks to issues to do with how the boards are constituted. Do we have equity in these boards? The diversity, issues to do with inclusion in these boards. Issues to do with remuneration of the board members. And these are issues, if you've been able to look at some of these sustainability reports or the ESG reports. Organizations are coming out clearly to report on milestones against targets they have set in each of these pillars. ESG reporting, like I said earlier on, it utilizes various metrics when reporting is being done. It could be on carbon footprint, energy consumption, water, issues of gender, and greenwashing. Greenwashing is a very interesting issue which has to do with how organizations may portray themselves wrongly on their achievements against environmental sustainability. Certain things that in actual sense may not be done in as far as their commitments are concerned, but then they go ahead and present as though they are fulfilling those requirements. Now, one of the most important reporting frameworks for ESG is what they call the Global Reporting Initiative. It's not the only reporting framework, but it's the most widely used by over 82% of the world's largest 250 corporations. They report on their ESG framework in accordance with the GRI standard. What are the benefits of having an ESG framework for an organization? The first benefit is an enhanced reputation. Once you have a good reputation in as far as your ESG implementation is concerned, there is a tendency of it attracting customers, especially those who are enlightened. Investors, for organizations that are looking for financing, a lot of these financiers, the DFIs, are happy to invest into organizations that have ESG frameworks that are up and running. And when these financiers or investors are doing their environmental and social due diligence, once they find an organization with a sound ESG framework, it will increase the chances of these investors to fund your activities. Even employees, some employees are happy to work for organizations that demonstrate a commitment to implementing their ESG frameworks. Beyond reputation, there is increased customer loyalty. Some customers will choose to buy your products or services because they believe that your organization actually speaks, its core values and beliefs speak to the people and the planet initiatives in as far as the ESG is concerned. When you implement an ESG framework, there is usually reduced costs, especially from the perspective of energy efficiency and waste reduction. If you are recycling or you're implementing a circular economy, you do not use a lot of new resources, but you keep recycling part of what you were using. You turn it into the circular economy. And one of the direct benefits would be a reduction in costs for an organization. There is improved employee morale and retentions. Like I said, especially if those employees who are informed who have a conscience towards people and planet. They would want to be associated with an organization that walks the talk, and such employees will commit to working to an organization that demonstrates that they are walking the talk in as far as the ESG framework is concerned. The other benefit is a reduction in exposure to reputational and legal risks, especially under the governance pillar. Companies that have been involved in unethical ways of doing business, some of these companies have been hit with huge penalties. And besides them having to pay these huge penalties to regulators, their reputations have been tainted, affected greatly. Some of them have lost value on the stock exchange. So it's very, very important for every organization to ensure that when they implement an ESG framework, they take care of the potential risks that a business could suffer. And because there is an opportunity for organizations to report on their targets that could easily pick up areas of improvement, they could easily pick up gaps and address these concerns, which would keep them in line with compliance requirements. And the other final benefit is really long-term sustainability, because sustainability in its entirety is really about long-term, creating value. So when an organization has long-term goals and they work towards meeting or fulfilling those goals, then such an organization is likely to continue in operation, even posting profits. TreeLink Global is an organization is a company, a research organization in the US, and it came up with this finding that it has been found that businesses that adopt ESG standards tend to be more diligent, less risky, and consequently more likely to be successful in their long-term commercial aims as compared to their counterparts that do not adopt ESG standards. I want to wrap up my presentation with a quote that was made by a gentleman called Paul Polman. Paul said that we cannot choose between economic growth and sustainability. We must have both. Paul is a respected person in the sustainability space. He's a former chief executive for Unilever, which is one of the world's leading FMCGs. And he's also a former chair of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. So I want us to ponder upon that quote, that indeed we cannot choose between economic growth and sustainability. We need both to continue. And I want to thank you so much for taking your time out to listen to this webinar. And I'm going to hand over to our coordinator to take us to the next point, if there are any questions for which the team may require me to clarify on. I'll hand over to you, Madam Vice President. Thank you.
Wow, wow, wow. Guys, I need to see some hand claps in the chat. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alex, for not only taking us through the training, but also for managing your time. And as far as questions, I'm sure that you've answered most of the questions that were in the chat, but I will just have a few questions. And those that have questions, please, who still feel have unanswered questions, kindly type them into the chat. But first, I have a question from Martin. Martin wants to understand what's the relationship between ESG, ISO standard, and IFC performing standards. Okay, so I think you need to clarify on that. What is the relationship between ESGs, ISO standards, and IFC performance standards? And how do they speak to the 17 SDGs that you've talked about? That is a question from Martin. And then I'll give you two questions you answer before I go to the next, okay? For those who are asking about the shared slides, I want to inform you that all the slides, all the trainings that we conduct at SHAO are on our YouTube channel. You can still follow them. Go back and listen to them. Go to the SHAO YouTube channel. Rachel, please type the link to the YouTube channel for those that need to, again, listen to these trainings, okay? You can follow, you can subscribe, and you'll be able to get the presentations, okay? So that was question number one, Alex. And question number two says, how are ESGs regulated and where are the reports submitted? That is a question from Moses. Kindly, those are two questions that I need you to answer very quickly, and then we can move to the next question.
Thank you. Thank you so much for those wonderful questions and for following through. Martin, you asked a very, very good question. And indeed, I want to respond by saying that there is a direct relationship between ESG, the ISO standards, and the IFC performance standards. I'll start with the ISO. If you implement an IMS system, you will appreciate that each of the 3 ISO standards speaks to commitments, and there is an element of continuous improvement embedded in them. When you look at ISO 14001, it exclusively revolves around environmental management. And ESG, when you look at the environment pillar of sustainability, is really about people and planet. So planet, which is the environment pillar, could be addressed when you implement an ISO 14001 standard on environmental management systems. You would be able to actually speak to concerns of the environmental pillar in the ESG. We've talked about issues to do with waste management, for example, issues to do with pollution, greenhouse gas emissions. So all these attributes under the environment pillar, if you're having an ISO 14001 standard which is being implemented, you are actually able to address concerns of the environment pillar in ESG. The same for 45001. It's about people managing risks, hazards, ensuring that there is no exposure of harm to people. These people could be your employees. These people could be your visitors at your premises. These people could be those within the community where your entity, where your organization operates. It's not any different from the IFC performance standards. The IFC performance standards are 8 in number, and these standards speak to E&S, what we call the environment and social safeguards. And you will see they speak to issues to do with community labor standards, issues to do with child labor, forced labor. And as you are taking care of these concerns in the social pillar of ESG, you can as you are actually implementing the IFC performance standards, you are fulfilling the requirements. You're taking care of people and planet. So for organizations that have funding from the IFC or some of the DFIs whose own social safeguards are aligned to the IFC performance standard, it also helps you as an organization to fulfill the E&S, the environmental and social pillars in sustainability. I think that answers Martin's question. There's a relationship and it's actually achievable. Moses' question was on where ESGs reported and regulated. For organizations that are listed, in Uganda, we have the Uganda Securities Exchange, which I think currently has, I think 13 companies are listed on the Uganda Securities Exchange, with the most recent one being Airtel Uganda, whose IPO was only completed a couple of weeks ago. So for any organization that is listed on the stock exchange, like the Uganda Securities, the Nairobi Stock Exchange, Joburg, New York Stock, London Stock Exchange, it is a requirement. So these companies, these organizations actually go ahead and report on their ESG performance because it is a requirement for these bodies where they are listed for them to report on their ESG requirements. Regulation, I don't think there is a body, but what happens is if companies do not meet their ESG commitments, sometimes in developed markets especially, you will see a lapse in the shareholding. The pricing may go low. Some people may choose not to invest with them. But I'm sure that regulators, regulatory bodies, like in Uganda, we have the National Environment Management Authority, the Petroleum Authority of Uganda. They may not explicitly regulate ESG, but they pick up specific components that they are that they look out for when they license or give us or give your companies licenses, like an EIA, permit, which has terms and conditions. There are issues to address concerns with waste management, emissions, issues to do with the polluter pays principle, which if violated, there could be penalties from the respective regulator. Over to you, Franklin.
Okay, thank you very much, Alex, for that. And like I said, I'll be bringing 2 or 3 questions. I think this should be the last questions. We're supposed to stop at exactly 2. So I'm going to share only 2 questions. I have another question from Martin, and it says, in the energy sector and extractives industry, where do EITI compliances merge with an organization's ESG agenda, and how are these reported? Then question number 2, I'm not sure if you have that. Question number 2 says, what is the performance indicator of any organization or company that uses ESG that uses ESG. Yes. And then he asks also, she asks that where can this be done as a short course? Is there any place where you can learn ESGs as a short course? That is from RISPA. And then someone wants you to re-echo governance, okay? The governance pillar and how it enables or how it supports in attaining environmental and social. Yes, that is from Jacqueline. How does the governance impact on attaining E and S? Yeah.
Thank you so much. I will start with the second question on performance indicators. It depends on the metric that is being measured by an organization. For example, when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions, companies, there is an agreed to initiative which is called the Scientific Based Target Initiative, SBTI, which is a measurable framework for any organization. I know it's being used especially by the telecom companies that are trying to measure the emissions footprint from diesel generation or sites that are running off diesel generators. So that is what I can really comment to as a performance indicator, which is globally accepted, the scientific based target initiatives. On corporate governance, Jacqueline asked me to reiterate on the governance pillar. Well, the governance pillar is really aligned around compliance, business compliance. How does a business, how does an organization operate? Issues to do with compliance, it's usually driven by your compliance departments. Issues to do with unfair competition. Issues to do with anti-bribery and anti-corruption. Are there kickbacks that are involved in a company signing up a huge contract? Is there lobbying with government officials for you to be awarded business contract, for you to gain unfair competition against competitors? Taxes, are you undercutting? Are you not reporting your taxes appropriately and paying your taxes? So really the governance pillar is more around ethical conduct of the business and how you operate to ensure that there is benefit on the side of the other two pillars for the social pillar and the environmental pillar. And also the issue of greenwashing, I talked about it, where a company may choose to report on certain commitments to appear as though they are aligned to especially the environmental sustainability pillar, but yet in actual sense, it's not happening. That is also an ethical issue. The energy sector, I'm not sure I can answer this particular question on the EITI. I think this is on extractive industry, something initiative. I think I'll get back to this particular question. I don't have a proper answer to it for now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Alex. And we are privileged to have you. One of the key take homes, like I said, they've shared a YouTube link. So in case you need to repeat or to go back to the ESG training, you can go to our link, to our YouTube link. You should be able to get that information and get that training again. But also remember to type, to keep the conversation moving. Let's have all the questions still on our social media platforms. You can send them to our WhatsApp, you can send them to the Twitter, you can send them to our LinkedIn page, and definitely they will all be responded to. I'm sure that by now we all understand what ESGs are. We understand the importance, we understand the reporting, we understand the things that we needed to know, the basic things that we needed to know about ESG. Like Alex has said, he's an expert. You can still feel free to reach out if you need support. I'm sure he should be able to help you, especially with the compliance. So kindly keep the conversation flowing. And at this point, I'm going to invite our president, Edgar, to give the closing remarks. Edgar, please. Someone support Edgar to unmute and give us closing remarks.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Vice President, and thank you very much, our guest speaker, Alex Kaku. You've really highlighted and given us a background on ESG and how it can be implemented. And I think this is very good information that all of us need, since we are in the sustainability world now. The world has changed. It has gone into sustainability. So ESG is very key for all of us, especially in our practice. If you want to have an edge over others, you need to have some information that you need for yourself and also for your organization, so that you're adding value, and ESG is the way to go. Thank you very much, Alex, for accepting our invitation to come and speak to our members, but also for being part of SHAO and being supportive of the of this association that you saw when it was a baby before even it set off. Uh, Thank you very much. I want also to thank the members and the audience, for people who logged in and for being able to reach at this time. I know you have other things that you should be doing, but you decided to dedicate this time for the purposes of adding value and getting more knowledge, as our speaker was sharing knowledge. This is very good, and please keep it up. And we thank you very much, because without you, then we would be talking to no one. I want to thank also the organizers. Um, this is a great effort. While we see it happening, but there is a lot that is involved. So our organizers, I want to thank you and the top leadership team for standing with everyone so that this event happens. And we believe that we shall continue with this. I urge all people who have logged in, please, I encourage you to give feedback. I think the feedback form has been shared. Please give us a feedback on how the training was, so that we can see how to improve for better future. Because every day we look at improving on where we went, what did not go well in the last event. I also want to encourage to inform members that we have the shower dinner, and the dinner will take place on the 9th of December. Please feel free to join, to contact our teams. Franklin, who is the vice president, is the one in the lead, and the Rachel, Elizabeth, and Doreen. You can get in touch with them and see how you can get your tickets, or how you can sponsor if you have a company, and be part of the great cause for creating a safer tomorrow for our nation and for our region, East Africa. I also want to thank uh, colleagues from Kenya and Tanzania. I saw them, they entered, I saw them join, and they have been there. We cannot take this for granted. Thank you for embracing the partnership, and of course, this is what we hope for, that we build a greater future together as a region. I want to wish you uh, the best of the weekend and be blessed. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. President. Unfortunately, the Vice President has dropped off, the moderator for today. I don't know if I'm audible enough. Mr. Alex, can you hear me? Okay, I will be closing the meeting.
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Alex, for your time. Let us follow Mr. Alex on his social media handles on LinkedIn. We've tagged him on the posters that we've been putting out, and let's keep the conversation going. If you have questions that you feel have not been answered, just reply to the post that we made and tag him. He'll be able to answer the questions there. Follow our social media handles, and we shall be able to share with you the presentation. If you registered and your email was recorded at the time of registration, we shall be able to share that. And we shall also put the recording on the YouTube, like the previous moderator said. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your questions. We are constrained because of time. So if you feel your question wasn't answered, please simply take it to social media. LinkedIn, Mr. Alex will be able to answer you. We look forward to meeting you all at the Shao dinner. That will be 9th December, like the president has said. If you can sponsor the event, we shall be happy to partner with you in organizing this event and making it a memorable day. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good afternoon. Agaba, your hand is up, but we are closing. Agaba, is it very urgent? Okay, you can send us messages on our social media handles. We shall be able to respond. Allow us close the meeting for the interest of time. Have a good afternoon.